Welcome to episode 0.5 of the Bricecast. Join me here, of course, the wonderful tactical Rab. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. It's been a while,
It
and
has.
it's been a crazy couple of months in the CoD scene for everything else. The channel's been doing really well lately, which is
Oh, I've
good.
seen. I've seen.
Helped, of course, by what has been happening, which it just doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. I always think, should I save this topic for another day and make sure I
You
have an
can't.
upload, or should I just make a double upload? And usually the latter is the way to go because there's always something new. Every day I wake up and Cronut CDL Intel, he's banging out tweets. People are flaming each other. I think the quarantine's getting to people. That's what I think it is. I think people are getting frustrated with the situation and then they take it out on Twitter, which is fine.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think part of it is, I mean, this podcast is basically the utter state of esports. We've got a lot to catch up on, right? I think you are right in what you're saying is it's getting to people, but I also think the fact that people don't have to confront people at the moment in events is meaning they can just say what the hell they want on
That's a
Twitter.
point, actually. Yeah.
And it's madness. I feel like we stopped this bit and the world just imploded. It's genuinely chaos, and I'm sick of it. Here's the honest truth. One of the reasons I was like, I got started now, is because I'm so sick of it, and there are some people who should be ashamed of themselves, because I get right. It's a tough scenario all round, and I accept there are issues this year which should have been avoided, but there are also a lot of unavoidable issues, and to put down the esport, which I love, and I'm sure many people listening, and I know Rab loves, to the point where people have said to me they don't even feel like watching events because the dismissing of them. But the thing is, if you actually watch the event, if you watch the last event, right, Toronto, it was a great fucking event. It was great. I love watching it. Don't get me wrong, I understand there are issues. I do, and we'll cover some of them as we go through. But for fuck's sake, like, come on. I tell you what, Rab. It's just to throw it out there. Where would you like to start? Anything you particularly want to just crack on? What's top of your mind right now?
Man, that's crazy. I wondered what your thought process was because I was looking through what I always do to check what's happening. I just look through the uploads and I just see what's been happening. And I wonder where we left off. That's the question. Like, did we even cover Pristini to Huntsman? Like, did we do that?
No, that was
Or
it's so long ago.
I mean,
I mean, it started today,
we
right?
want to do
There's more stuff.
local,
I tell you, here's what I'll go for,
contemporary.
right? Here's what I'll start with.
Crack on.
The state of players and roster changes in Call of Duty at the moment, because it's interesting to me, and I've spoken about this. The internals of franchises at the moment, with you now have a little bit limited in terms of, like, you're not getting any European players, right? That entire market is gone, just gone. And you could have probably taken some European players. Some might have taken a risk this year. It might have happened. Probably wouldn't. Franchises are hedging their bets, but it's insane for me to see the fact that, like, nobody. If people are saying, "Oh, we're not seeing that many switching," or "We're seeing too much switching," it's all this kind of bullshit, right? You've got to remember now that the esports whole thing is changing, and you've got to understand that what I want to see, and maybe you disagree with me, is players coming to the realization that they need to be worked on and coached and mature over time. Because there's always been this thing in Call of Duty, right? They talk about, oh, if a team doesn't do well in their first event, it's chalked, they're never going to get any better. Which, quite frankly, is bullshit. It is, right? That's just saying that, oh, you are... If you said to me,
Absolutely.
right, I don't know, let's go to Clayster back in Black Ops 2 and said, you are the best player you're ever going to be right now. Is that true? Fucking no, of course not. Every player can get better. And they can also get better with good coaching, with good infrastructure, by becoming more mature and being coachable, right? And it takes time to get chemistry down. It takes time for strategies to come fucking full circle. And it's just and players throwing their toys at the fucking pram and running teams and all this bullshit that I've seen over the last fucking 6 months, where people don't understand that this is a massive business and they don't want to fucking crack on with it.
I feel you, man. It's a weird one. I think the most pronounced. I mean, first of all, just to say, like, teams that have improved massively this season have been the ones that have made roster changes, and interestingly, have been the ones that have picked up players from outside of the league, which is which is certainly interesting. Obviously, the online arena has had some effect on what type of players you
Yeah.
want to pick up, because you don't have to worry about them not, being nervous online or whatever. But at the same time, like more recently, the Paris Legion team was supposed to be the best example of a team where they play the London home series. They lose their first map 250-73 against Dallas Empire. They get absolutely smoked. And, Pac-Man, Nameless, other people are talking about how is this team not made a roster change? They've got Phantoms, Brezzy on the bench. Obviously, Brezzy is a bit of a difficult situation given how it is.
Yeah.
Why have they not made a change? And then they come back the rest of the tournament, massively improved, beat London in the game 5. Had a great run, get to the grand finals and fall short. But like that just shows that a team that really does focus on themselves can improve. And I think that other teams have attempted to take that route. I know that this change that was just announced yesterday with GodRx going to the bench on the rocker and Exceed coming in. That was a decision that they pondered for ages.
Yeah.
Brian Saint said that he considered bringing in Awakening earlier in the season, but they decided that, okay, maybe they can get their land form back if they just stick it out a bit longer. And okay, they took the time to do that. It didn't work out, and now they make a move. And is that too late? I don't know. I can see why teams have been on edge about getting new players in, because we see what Florida have done twice now with Pharaoh and now with Awakening. Probably some teams are on edge, but it's not always a solution.
See, here's the thing, right? I'm not saying never make a roster change, because I fully believe there are some players who, how do I put this? Undiplomatically, just arseholes. And they're difficult to work with, and they're difficult to do the team stuff with, and maybe they don't fit in with the current playstyle, because some of it is going to be the meta, some of it is going to be chemistry, some of it is going to be attitudes, right? But I also believe that they brought in these amateurs, and I fully believe part of it is the fact that the coaching situation this year, and I know a good few coaches, and I love the guys, and they're incredibly talented people. But I don't think coaching is at where it needs to be yet. I don't believe it's there yet. Of course it isn't. A lot of these people don't have a lot of fucking coaching experience. How can you coach somebody if you don't know how to work with these players yet? So as that gets better, right? As they start identifying talent better, as they start figuring out how to make a team work with the personnel, with actually coaching, you'll probably see teams be able to develop better during the year, work on the weaknesses, actually able to infiltrate things and get things done. Of course, sometimes a roster change, it makes a dramatic change, and we've seen it over and over again throughout the years of Call of Duty. Players call for it. I honestly feel, right, sometimes players give up if they don't get a roster change, so they're never going to get any better anyway. We've seen it over and over again. And that's part of the issue, is it's in the head of players. Roster change. If someone does a bad event or someone has a few, fuck it, get rid of him. I want to win. Get rid of him. I'm playing fine. Fuck him. Right? That's a great attitude, and maybe you get a bit of success and maybe you find the right chemistry. But the amount of roster changes that constantly churn over, if you win an event, wow, we're the best team ever, and then you don't do well in the next 3, another roster change. Well, what's changed from there to there?
Yeah, and just to jump in, I think you make a point about players giving up on their team's success without a roster change. I think we saw that quite recently with Dashi, of course, being moved to the bench on OGLA. And I mean, if you told me at the start of the year that Dashi would be benched off Optic, he was he's not their franchise player in the sense. I mean, Slasher's, of course, your number one target, I suppose, if you're that team. But still, crazy to see a guy as talented as him on the bench. And yes, the online situation hasn't helped, but what Chino talked about on the podcast is that, Dashi got to the point where Chino felt that Dashi didn't trust him as a teammate and didn't feel like that squad had potential. And therefore they made the move, right? But a lot of the time, I think it's a mindset thing. And I think that has been plaguing OGLA the entire season, frankly, when it went to online especially. And not to say that they don't have internet and connection issues, because the fact that they're based in LA doesn't give them the greatest pings with the servers that we currently have available. That's not to diminish that. That obviously is an issue that needs addressing. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I do think that at times they get in their heads, right? And they're like, okay, well, we're never going to win with this situation. And Dashi might have thought, well, we're never going to win with Chino plus this situation. So I might as well just give up. And, as Chino said, it's not like he didn't turn up for practice, but when he was in practice, he wasn't going 100%, right? Yeah. And if you're going to bring in guys like Hollow and Draza, not as talented as Dashi on paper, but they're going to listen to Slasher, right? There's no other way about it. So I think that has plagued teams this season, and I think it's been even more of an impact given the online thing and everyone's having a frustrating year. Doesn't help, but you're getting paid a lot of money. That's your job.
I agree. And so I don't know. So here's the problem, right? While I haven't been talking about Call of Duty as much in the last 3-4 months while I haven't been podcasting, I'm still listening and I'm still talking to players and I'm still talking to coaches. I still have an inside track, right? So I don't know what exactly. I know what I know about that situation, and you're along the same kind of track. Is that the attitude was off. And that's a key point, right? No matter how good this player is, if you're giving up, and bearing in mind, right, I've mentioned this 100 times, salaries for players is high. Will it always be high? I don't know. But if I'm being paid that much, and it's easy to get apathetic, right? Because, and this isn't specifically at Dashi. This isn't Attack on Dashi at all. This is a generic thing for players. If you're being told you are the greatest constantly, and you've got the stats to prove it, and you're playing fantastically. Any player does this. It becomes difficult for you to get perspective, right? Because you believe you're a champion, and a lot of pro players do. A lot of pro players I've ever met are the most competitive people I've ever seen. So once you're in that drive to win, and you're winning, and you're great, and you're fantastic, how do you deal with the fact that you may be fucking up? Especially if you're not, if you're under 21, if you're a player that's come into recently and you've gone from zero to fucking hero, it's not easy, and I don't think anybody would deal with it well. So it's easy to give up, say, oh fucking well, I'm good, I'll be all right, mate.
Yeah, I think that is certainly true, and I mean, just to go back to the Dashi example, I think he's had a very interesting career as it's turned out, right? Obviously being pretty hyped up young guy on Enigma 6 in World War II, dropping crazy numbers in terms of KD. People are like him, is this guy just a fraud? Is he a kill hole? Whatever. Then going on to Optic Gaming, and just the way he broke into the scene was crazy in that sense, right? Like he played Infinite Warfare Champs as straight ripping as well. People were kind of like, who is this guy? Goes on to Optic. Very first event he ever plays with Optic. Absolutely dominant, right? 1.4 KD, 10 pairs, just crushing it. Best player at the event, best player in the game straight away. And you know what the Optic fan base is like, right? And for good reason, he was getting hella gassed up the entire year. So now you get at a point where maybe he doesn't get the move he wants. He's stuck on OGLA, the rest of the guys that he was teaming with last year, onto Chicago. There was the whole thing about whether he wanted that and whether he was informed by Scump or whoever, like that was a potential. And then obviously frustrated with the situation being stuck on OGLA.
Yeah.
And then you get to a point where the rest of your team isn't performing, and not just, as I say, not just singling out Dashi. I'm sure this happens to a number of players, but you're thinking, well, it's not really my fault, is it? So,
not the only player this happened to, by the way. Not the only player this year, even just this year. Not the only player this has happened to. And it's mad because we're supposed to, and I feel like I've taken straight off where Spitfire left off. We have got to a point now, right, where there has to be somebody able to talk these players round. Almost like a therapist, being able to point them in the right direction, keep that motivation up, because self-motivation is very, very difficult, and it takes a while, and it becomes down to discipline rather than motivation. But you have to keep drilling that down, and I can completely empathise and sympathise with these players that are frustrated by having to play it all online, the game mechanics, all this sort of stuff. And then losing and getting smoked, and people talking shit in your mentions. I understand. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, it's all sunny and you should fucking grow up. What I do understand is how frustrating that is from a competitor's point of view. What I don't understand is that there aren't more things in place and people haven't figured out yet how to get these players back into fucking line. Like, the coaching staff we've seen, some teams have got bigger coaching staff, some teams have got less. There's a background infrastructure. There's very important people. Even some of the owners of these franchises, right? Very well-respected businessmen and women, and they know a thing about it. Fucking have a word with them. Just say, this is how it is. It's difficult to give advice to an 18-year-old who's hot shit. But that's probably a $300,000 a year asset that's going to sit on your bench and do fuck all but moan. It's a different kettle of fish, and I just want to see it be better this year. And we haven't even got into specifics yet.
Yeah, I think that is that's an interesting conversation that isn't really talked about, I suppose, too much, especially with all the other madness going on. But it's definitely something that the online league hasn't helped, right? Because at the end of the day, we'd love to be on LAN. Everyone would love to be on LAN, and there's people like Slasher talking about, well, what are the chances that actually happens next year? How many events would there even be? Is that something the CDL want to explore? How much a visa is going to be an issue? And it's very nice and optimistic to say, okay, whatever, Champs is online this year, and then next year we're going to be starting off fresh, and everyone is going to have a clear mind going into the new season, and it's going to take it all serious and everything. That's not going to happen, and we may not have
I
the
hate
lands that
though.
we're looking for.
I hate it. I hate the idea of not taking it seriously because you might be at a disadvantage or it might suck. Because they also,
Absolutely right. But...
I sit there and I see people go, oh, well, obviously they're worried and they're frustrated because next year they might not get picked up and they might get dropped. Yeah, that makes sense, right? I understand. It's very stressful, but to not try, to not put in your all and go, you know what, fuck it. If I can get through this, I can get through the next 6 months. There is something you mentioned there about champs and about this online thing. Because when I saw it kick off, and I was like, yeah, makes sense. No, 100% makes sense to go online. And I saw people moaning about it. And eventually the narrative changed a bit to, because of the server and stuff. And I'm like, well, that's more reasonable than the first argument I saw. And I think that sums up the problems I've been seeing in at least Twitter and socials in the last 3 months. The messaging isn't clear. The complaints look childish to kick things off. It's not something that you should fucking, that we should expect from professionals. And I spoke to some this morning, actually, and they said, moaning's the only way to get things done. But it's constructive moaning is. Just saying something is shit isn't. that doesn't help anybody. All it does is make the community go, this is crap, and then they stop caring. If you're told something is irrelevant and biased and uncompetitive and shit, then why am I going to care to watch you? Why am I going to contribute to a system that you're telling me is pointless? And this whole thing, like, Champs has got to be like, just so we're 100% clear on this issue, right? Champs shouldn't have even been considered to be on LAN. I don't care what kind of bubble you put up. Did I see something today that is it the NBA or baseball or something? They couldn't protect their players. They couldn't prevent them from getting COVID in the bubble. Whatever bubble was set up in America for a professional league failed, right? Activision, and I don't need to defend Activision. They can defend themselves. Activision are never ever going to go, let's do an event in a bubble when any aspect of liability is there for a game that we can play online. Servers aside, and I understand that currently the situation is not tenable. It is not acceptable for players to be playing on the ridiculous pings and not having enough servers. But it's never going to happen on LAN. And next year, it might not happen either. So, I don't know. I saw someone say they might retire or not play next year for 300 grand. Plus whatever else prize money. Yeah. So Slasher, again. I love the guy. But Jesus, to even pretend, like, think of this in the real thing. Rab, put yourself as a team owner right now.
I'm a team owner.
The tactical Rabs of, I don't know, I can't even think of a place. Hull. The tactical Rabs of Hull, right?
Let's not do that.
Using a player, and no matter whether or not it's tongue-in-cheek or whether or not he is saying it as an extreme example, which is what I imagined it actually was, right? But saying he may not consider playing next year if it's online. I know it's shit. It's terrible. It's terrible for players at the moment, and I'm sure they're trying to fix it for champs. But you own a franchise which is costing you millions a year. Millions, and you wait for a return of investment. Do you gamble on Slasher right now?
Not in the current state. Because I'm concerned. I mean, that's interesting, right? Because if I had to pick a 5-man team that I would want to form, like just for LAN, let's say we were just going into a generic game and it was going to be on LAN, we had no issues. Slasher would be in probably the first 4 players I pick. Like, I rate him very highly. I think he's a great winner. I think he has what it takes with multiple different teams. But right now, with the potential of online, I'm not jumping at the opportunity to snap him up because there's probably better options that are more, less volatile, should we say. So yeah, that is certainly a concern. And saying that stuff publicly, I think just to go back to your point on that, it removes the legitimacy talking about this stuff. It's an interesting one because I think it does to a degree when players talk about how it doesn't count because it's online and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of true. The fact is, like, do people actually stop watching as a result of that? They probably do, but I'm not sure that is reflected in the viewership. I don't know if it's like
really
people.
good.
Yeah, I know. I wonder if it's the same people that say, "Oh, this COD's crap, and I'm not going to buy it," but still buy it anyway.
Yeah.
Those people. And like, I don't know, that there might just be a degree to which the addition of this like added drama to the Twitter scene on that every tournament there's some complaint about the servers or something makes people want to watch or like at least get more engaged. So it's not good from like a CDL Activision franchise perspective. I'm not particularly happy with players saying my league is a shambles. But
you know what, Rab? You've just changed my mind a little bit there. Like I said, I'm always willing to take new viewpoints on, and I think the point you made there is fantastic, right? I didn't think about drama being a great driving factor. I didn't put that into my mind. And you're right. A lot of the time I enjoy watching COD because I know shit's going to kick off. You know that you're going to see tweets after a thing. You know people are going to go at each other. And that's a really good point as it goes. I think the point I'm trying to make for this year is we all knew it was going to go online, and people talk about asterisks and stuff. I was like, yeah, that's fair, right? We can say that there are going to be caveats. And I think Maven made a point saying, you know what, in 4 or 5 years, are we going to continue to see them wins or not? I'm like, well, yeah, probably. But if you're being honest, the people like me who remember tournaments like XP, we talk about XP in a different light, the very first XP to now for champs, right? Because you can't just pretend that context goes away. As long as you've got educated individuals who know the history and can bring that to light and say, oh, he won these homestands. Obviously, this was during the X era, the COVID era, or whatever you want to call it. But that's fine. I think my problem is the fact that it's continued. Like, I can accept, we could go, you know what, count was whatever, but we will accept it as it goes on and then just drop the conversation. Because it's no good every single event for people to go, oh, fuck it, it's not a real win. Oh, fuck you, it was pointless. Oh, it doesn't even matter that you won this. Because that doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help for people to go, oh, this is not something that's important, because it is. Still winning these events, you've still got to play these games, regardless of the server situation, which I know people are upset about. It's
money still exists, right?
Yeah, money still exists. The money's still going out. Players still being paid real money. They're still winning real prizes, and it's still going into their CODpedia. And I guarantee that after whoever wins champs, and if they've got rings, which it looks like they have because of the in-game charms, I guarantee those are real rings. They're not gonna. They don't come with an asterisk on the ring, right? But I don't know. The champs thing. Just to go back to it, because I saw something in the chat. The champs thing, to go back to it. For a long time, I was in favour of a bubble for COD. And I was thinking about the logistics, and I was thinking about all this sort of stuff. But this is what I spoke about before we went live in my video, about talking about devil's advocate. And this is the devil's advocate, and I want you to bear this in mind. It's not that I 100% agree with it. It's not that, I think it's the right thing. But this is the other side of that argument. If Activision were to bubble, which they probably could, a lot of resources, they could probably get it done, and a player became ill. Just ill. Fucking massive liability. Headlines, problems, people instantly going, we could have played it online. People wouldn't understand. And it's not just the educated people who go, oh, well, the servers and stuff. Try explaining that to somebody who says, so you could play this game online and you still went to an event. It doesn't compute to the wider audience. Right? That's the devil's advocate of this. And that's not even if a player gets complications, let alone a player fucking dies, right? Because it could happen. People could have, health problems we don't know about as a community, because obviously it's none of our fucking business most of the time, right? You don't know every player's health. You don't know if a player's immunosuppressed. It doesn't come up in their interview. How was your bowel movements today? Are you all right? Right? That's not fucking something we ask. We judge them on fucking... we judge them on how they play. We don't judge them on how healthy they are. And I think that's probably the argument against it. not only that, but obviously America's imploding with fucking COVID. So, the bubble's going to be made out of fucking titanium. I mean, apparently the NBA bubble is working, but that's obviously got way more resources. It's not even on the same thing. And I'm on the fence because I do believe a bubble could work, but I understand why the liability is so high.
No, I agree with your take exactly on this because it's something that could be done in theory. Like they have the resources, they could make it work. If they wanted to make it work for like the second part of champs, as it were, like championship, whatever exactly they're calling it. If they really wanted to, they could make it work. But I think the liability aspect is just the point where it's almost a blessing and a curse, the fact that we can game online, because it's meant that we haven't suffered. It's not like COVID has completely stripped us of everything. But the problem is, coming out the other end, real sports are going back to playing sports because they have to, whereas esports is now at the point where, well, we still can play online. And as you say, it would be an absolute disaster for Activision, I'm sure legally as well as PR, if they put on this event. And as you say, even if it wasn't COVID or like even if it was like suspected that someone might have it or something, and like how exactly do you get the players there? It's just a logistical nightmare when it can be done online. And that is just the crux of the issue. So that's just what they're going to do.
I mean, this whole thing, right, stems from servers. It does, and and it's time we talked about it, right? Because it's upsetting when I speak to players, and there is a thing in the background. I'm just gonna be honest with people who are watching. There is a thing in the background where some teams basically know who roughly should win each series because of which vetoes are going which way, right? They know roughly what the pings are now for all the teams. Everybody kind of figured it out. And and there's also been server switches who aren't working some weekends and are working other weekends. I think what's about to happen in the time between Toronto and Champs is, if Activision are going to do it, they are going to try and get as many servers online as possible for Champs. Just go, you know what? Throw money at the problem, because if we can give them fucking 800 servers, just a number out of the air, 800 servers, and we can get the pings somewhere, it's never going to be great, right? You play America's huge. It's never going to be fantastic. Everybody's going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage. They're going to go on Twitter and they're going to moan about it because they got bullshit in a gunfight. But if they can go, we have done our due diligence and we have put as many servers as we can online for Champs because we're giving away a shit ton of money, it's probably okay. It's probably what's going to happen, and it's probably okay because there's nothing else you could realistically expect at that point.
Yeah, I think they, especially if that is what we're looking for next year as well, which it probably is to some degree, they have to really consider investing in this because that is the key point that is a point of frustration. And honestly, I don't know. I feel like I see less about this on Twitter than maybe I should, because I don't even really think Paris were moaning about it too much at the London home series, but they had to play against Dallas in the finals. And like they vetoed whatever server was nowhere near them, and then because of the way the veto system works on the servers, they ended up playing on like the Texas server, which is right next to Dallas, and getting absolutely destroyed. Which is interesting, right? Because you look at their tournament, and the problem is that you now look back at that tournament and you think, well, damn, Paris looks really good between their first series against Dallas and the last series against Dallas in the finals, but in both those series they got destroyed. So how much is that? Like, is Dallas actually better? Is it just internet? Were Paris better than the other teams, or is it just internet? Like, this is a discussion which we should just never have to be having. But unfortunately we do, and for good reason. And the CDL really need to look at this, because it is a point that I hate to talk about, but it is a massive one when there's this amount of money on the line.
Yeah, of course it is. And when you're talking about that, it's hard to do power rankings when everybody's beating everybody, and everybody is beating everybody at the moment. And you are right saying, well, who's actually the best here? Because I don't know who's going to win Champs. Normally I have a pretty good idea. I could pick a favourite. I could go for it. I haven't got a fucking clue. Could be could be any one of probably 8 teams. 8 teams. I mean, it's probably not Surge or LAG, to be honest with you, but it's pretty open most of the way. And it could, I mean, even then, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, those bottom 4 that start in losers, they're kind of done for. But the top 8, like, pretty much anything can happen. I mean, you see what Toronto managed to pull off. Like, if they can do that on a single weekend, they can do it, or another team could do it. And Minnesota's just made a roster change. New York, like, attach, Champs player, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy, and it in a sense is exciting, right? Like it's not like we go into this event thinking. I mean, the champs format is interesting. The fact that like Atlanta and Dallas have 2 buys, so they only technically have to win 3 series to win the whole thing. Is that too much of an advantage? But if you're going to predict a champion, you pretty much just have to predict based on how the bracket looks, rather than predicting who you think is the best team.
Yeah.
Because matchup dependent is so important now. And as you said, like we've talked about matchups in the past, to how this 5-man roster stacks up well against that 5-man roster because they play in a similar style, and therefore the gun skill comes out on top or whatever. Whereas now you're talking about, well, this 5-man roster stacks up well against that 5-man roster because they have the server advantage, because that's where the servers are. So yeah, I'm sure pros think about this a lot. I think Activision really needs to take a hard look at it.
Pros definitely think about this a lot.
They definitely think about it a lot.
I don't know, man. It's upsetting because, like I said, man, there's 2 sides to this, right? Activision, obviously, it was never intended for this to happen. This is come out of left field. Nobody could have predicted that everything would have to grind to a halt. Nobody could have predicted how it would go. Nobody could predict the government's response to it. Nobody could predict any of this, right? So they're always going to be dealing with a big bag of just shit that's been dumped on them. And obviously they're going to be trying their best. To say that they're willfully negligent is wrong. Have they made mistakes? Of course they have. There are certain aspects of it that we know now in hindsight to be a mistake to have made. Some of the way the servers have been done, some of the way the broadcast and the software and all that sort of stuff was integrated. But, to pull it to where it is now, without the servers, the broadcast is pretty bloody good, right? The Toronto, I enjoyed the crap out of it. Very good broadcast. Love Warzone weekend. Best thing that's come out of COVID is the fact we don't have to watch fucking hype battles anymore.
Yeah. Hype battles are gone, baby. Come on.
Hype battles, by the way, cost upwards of $100,000. Just so we're
clear. I can't
clear.
believe they actually like.
Just so we're clear, just how much they were throwing at that shit.
That's crazy.
So that's the best. That's the best thing about Corona. The best thing about Corona is Warzone weekend and no more hype battles. I think I tweeted that out the other day. Let's move on because I want to talk about GAs. Another thing that irritated me. And this one. So the rest of it, devil's advocate. There are many sides to it. This one is bad though. This one really irritates me. I'll get your thought on it first because my dog's going berserk. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Sure. Yeah. I mean. Where do we begin on GAs? This is a interesting question because it started a long time ago. We always talk about this. Every single CoD, at some point in the year, we have to talk about GAs, and then eventually everyone agrees that they're just going to agree to it because it just makes more effort if they disagree, and then we just continue with our lives as normal. I feel like I've talked this topic to death. Around 10mm, around auto tac sprint, around the Uzi that then people figured out was good, and then they decided to GA the ammo conversions. The AUG that people found out was good, they decided to GA that because at the end of the day, the pros like the M4, MP5 meta, so let's stick with that. I don't necessarily blame them for that to some degree. Like the meta makes sense.
I have to jump in here because I fucking do.
Go on.
This is the bit that's irritated me, and I wanted to see how you felt on it first. I've made a video on GAs before. GAs are a band-aid to keep the game competitive and working in a good state, right?
Yep.
That's what GAs are for. They are a faster method of players to adjust the rule set to make it better for them to play and in some regards watch. Not all the time, but some regards watch. That argument there, that very last argument I heard is what I like to think of as a bad faith argument. To say we prefer a meta, so we're just going to stick with it, is not what GAs are for. A GA is not to tweak a meta to how you like it, unfortunately. It's not about that. It's about making sure the game remains competitive and it can work in, for everybody. Because let's be honest, right? It's not just the pros that deal with it. It trickles down. AMs deal with it. They play with the GA. They don't have to do anything. They're not going to get, but it trickles all the way down, right? Even into GBs. I play GBs. People, the suppressors before they're banned, people wouldn't use them unless you use them and the GA was off. Like that sort of shit. It trickles down even into GBs. To say you want to stay at a current meta because you've been playing, and I think I saw this argument. To say you want to stay on a current meta if you've been playing it for 8 months is quite frankly mental. Because the meta has already changed. We've seen the meta right now, Rab, changed, and there was already a GA that was added anyway, which changed the meta. 10 mil got nerfed and then got removed by GA. Merc 4 grip then got removed as well. Now those two things probably should have been taken out 8 months ago, but we'll forgive that. Then we talk about the org and we talk about the Uzi. If these things were so great, why weren't we using them all year? But now that people are trying them because they're trying to find alternatives, now they're too good. The meta changed anyway, right? The meta changed. The meta has changed. It's a different meta. People have got rid of no stock. People are running more ARs. It is a different meta. So the M4 MP5 meta doesn't make sense anymore because you're not playing the same meta. The guns have changed ever so slightly with the nerfs. So the fact that they've got the same fucking skin on them, and it's called this fucking block of code has the same fucking shape of the MP5 you've always used. It's not the same. It has changed. So I don't think you can have a GA that is based around the fact that, we've been playing it for 8 months, let's just keep it as it is. I think you have to look at it objectively. And I also don't agree with the way GAs have been done. There are 12 team captains, I believe, in the chat, and it gets ruled on. I don't know if there's a proper discussion. There are ARs voting on SMG stuff because of the captains that are in there. It should be anonymous. Pro should be able to fucking vote anonymously. I don't know who they would go through, some sort of body, whoever. 75%, I think, minimum to put something in the GA bracket is a perfectly fine system. I don't know who would set that up. I don't know how it would work. But then it needs to be explained to the community, right? Because the community, when all this was kicking off, thought it looked silly. This is GA, not GA. Oh, it's GA. Oh, we're going to GA the knife. We're not going to GA the knife. Oh, people moaning about it. Here's a clip. Here's not a clip. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make pros look better because you're all going at each other. GA should never come into the public before they're discussed and then something has come out. And I'm not saying player association. I just mean as a group statement. There needs to be said, we are doing this because of X, right? And we've found that it happens in X. Because a GA is only guaranteed by the players, right? The rule set, Activision, the CDL, everybody. The GAs is a completely separate thing. And I think they have an opportunity to make GA seem more legitimate. Because if they can make the GA sound legitimate, might be putting the rule set faster. If you can say, we've done it for these reasons. I know pros can say, I don't have to explain myself. Well, unfortunately, there are hundreds of thousands of people who watch you every week. And they want to fucking know. Right? We make videos on it. We discuss it. There's content that comes out. We want to know what's happening with the game. And we need to understand. And it's fine to go public when you want to complain and you need something changed. Like, tax sprint and stuff, right? I can understand it from a competitive point of view that it may lower the skill gap, but I'm not turning it off, and nobody in GBs is turning it off, and nobody in the AM scene is going to turn it off. So it seemed a little bit weird for it to be GA'd. It's just frustrating to see vomit on Twitter constantly with no real substance to back it up.
I think you struck on pretty much all the key issues. What I was getting at saying I don't blame the pros is because my conclusion was going to be that they have the power to do what they want effectively. The way that it works right now is that if the pros decide they want to do that, then they can just do it and no one's going to stop them because, as you say, if the majority of, as you say, like most teams have like a designated GA person who's usually an AR or whatever, because they're like a older player, veteran player, whatever, mostly tend to be ARs. And they go into the call and then they decide what happens and they just get rid of the stuff that they don't like. And because they have the power to do that and they have the freedom to do that, that is far from ideal. So it does certainly beg the question, because in an ideal world, I think that the pros decide, okay, this is broken, this isn't good enough, or this is too good, or whatever. It reduces the skill gap, which maybe is true to some degree. Like, there's not denying that GAs are necessary at times, because I agree that they are. But in an ideal world, we get to the point where the pros can decide between them, 75%, whatever, and have a discussion with Activision, the CDL, to say, look, this is too strong, this needs to go. And Activision can talk to the Infinity Ward or whoever, the development team, and maybe the development team has a segment of the development team which is just purely focused on competitive play, and they can almost immediately reflect that in the CDL rule set once it has gone through. The problem may be that, just one more quick thing, the problem maybe that comes up as a result of that is, when do GAs become going too far, right? Just because all the pros agree doesn't necessarily mean that it's something which should be implemented. Like the knife GA, for example, like people saying, okay, too many knives and smokes on the map reduces the skill gap, whatever. Like, is that taking it too far? How do we have some sort of body? And the problem is, like, you have a body, okay, like who do you put on the body? Karma, like TP. But the problem is they don't play the game, like assuming they're still retired, don't play the game at that high competitive level to understand what should be gone and should not be.
See, that's the key point, right? Because they don't need to. If it works properly, they don't need to. So, how it should work, or at least in my mind, how I think it could work better, because I don't think the current thing is... There's clearly flaws in the current one, right? Because if you're having this discussion, some players are more charismatic, some players are more dominant in their personalities and louder and able to argue their point and speak better. So, and you don't get to really vote in a closed atmosphere. So, there are some aspects of intimidation, not, over intimidation. People say, oh, if you don't do it, I'll beat you up. But it is that kind of atmosphere, right? You can't talk
don't do it, you're not getting scrims. So
yeah.
basically the same thing.
Yeah. So it doesn't foster a real discussion, probably. What should happen is that last person, whoever it is, and the pros could probably just chuck them a tiny bit of money or whatever, goes, right, here are the arguments. Do any players want to speak for it? Any players want to speak against it? Then we'll have a discussion. Players can listen in, or whatever kind of roundtable needs to happen for this to go through. Whoever wants to speak on their matter can. Then we go, right, we're going to vote on it. It's some sort of system where people can vote anonymously, probably like a Google form with everybody player has an individual number, all gets collated into yes or no, and then you find the results. The only person who ever knows who voted which way is going to be the person in charge. It's all anonymous. If it goes through, great. If it doesn't, well, clearly, that's as it is. It hasn't gone through. And then, once that's done, and the GA is going into place, because let's face it, right, in this current atmosphere, we do talk about GAs, then the reasoning can go out. The pros have spoken about it. They've put these points forward, and they have felt this way. And everybody goes, all right, yeah, that makes more sense now. Maybe you disagree with it, maybe you don't, but at least it's a united front. There is a reason behind it, and it has been done in such a way that nobody can claim otherwise.
I think that's the ideal. And what's interesting is that it seems to be worse this season than it usually is, for maybe a number of different reasons. I mean, that the game has a lot of added things in, and people are very frustrated for some good reasons. But yeah, it's definitely been more to the forefront this season. But it is a topic that comes up every single season without fail at some point, at least a couple of times. And as I was saying right at the beginning, the way it always goes is the GA is proposed, people disagree, people fight back, people do whatever, FaZe say they're going to use the org, and then they realize, hang on a second, we're not going to get scrims against top teams because, that they might be pretty serious about their threats or whatever, and it just doesn't look good from a comradely, whatever. I'm sure... I don't know. I mean, the fact of the matter is that GA's become up as a discussion, and then they all just go through eventually because that's just how the system is formed right now. And the CDL, they recognize GAs on their stream. They had a graphic that came up and it said "Gentleman's Agreement, Snaking is gone."
I'm not sure that was supposed to happen.
All this stuff. I'm like, what's this? But they bring it up on stream as if they're, representing them as legitimate things, but yet they provide no infrastructure to actually. Deal with this in a appropriate and professional manner. So surely it must be something on their mind for future seasons, because this is just going to crop up again and again, if not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much Activision can get involved, but I would love to see a pro go, right, can we please just do this in a different way? Can we please I don't care about the whole union thing. I don't care about player association, the rights. That's all way more complicated. This could be simple, right? It just needs somebody slightly independent to figure this shit out. I don't care. Use a caster. Use anybody who doesn't have skin in the game. Somebody who can go, look, it'll take me 10 minutes to look at a form and distribute and figure out which way the vote's gone. You guys can table it however you want. But please be more... Because I think it adds something. I think it adds a professionalism, right? Because then the people at Activision or the developers can't go, oh, they're just wildcat striking things. All this wildcat GAing and all this GAing argument that's going on is probably causing a reaction, Activision side, dev side, going, these pros don't know what they're doing. They're acting like crazy people. Right? They're going, oh yeah, it's in, it's out. You know, we don't know what we're doing. So it delegitimizes genuine complaints the pros have, right? And I know there's been talk about this year that there hasn't been the full communication channels that they would like, and that, if it's true, is unacceptable in the extreme. But 3 weeks left. It's a bit late to be for me to be talking about that now. But at the moment, GA seem to be done in bad faith, and obviously, any time that something spills over onto Twitter, it's 1,000 times worse behind the scenes. So it must have been like civil war behind the scenes. Here's an interesting one, right? So I was in a Discord server where there are some players, and I'm sitting in a call, and I asked the question about the 10 mil GAs. Didn't go well.
Chaos, I imagine.
There was two players went at each other, who were quite happily just talking, friends, get along, and they said, "Oh, it's just it was quite heated in my mind for a very light-hearted topic, and obviously it wasn't the first time it had been discussed, but it was genuine, like exasperation and passion being poured out into this argument between two people who aren't going to vote on it. They weren't even. I don't think they were in there. The captains were separate. So it's just like that is crazy to think how heated it probably did get behind the scenes. And I imagine there were probably people saying, "Oh, you will be blacklisted." And there were people saying, "Oh, if you do this, I won't play with you," and all this bullshit. So why not maybe put it into a system where you go, yeah, all right, if we're going to do this and it's becoming more out in the open, and it's it's probably still written in the contract, so they're not allowed to do it, because that was the point. GAs are banned, and they're still GAs.
That's what I don't get, right? Because collusion was in the contracts as like you can't collude with other teams, but yet then they just bring GAs up on the stream. So I don't know anymore.
I don't know if I say this. I don't think that was supposed to happen.
Yeah,
I heard some rumours that wasn't supposed to happen, and let's be clear, we haven't seen it since. It's the only time it happened. It happened one time. And I don't know whether it got poo-pooed from Activision or whether it got, this didn't work, or it's too much resources to explain why the hell the things called GAs are even in this when we've got a rule set. It could be any one of a number of reasons, but that didn't seem to be something that we're going to see again.
I doubt it.
Yeah, but you are right about collusion. Technically, I'm fairly certain none of them are supposed to. I'm fairly certain none of them are supposed to sit in Discord till fucking 3 a.m. with all different team members and they're talking about CoD.
Yeah.
I think was it Overwatch who they weren't allowed to play with each other. They're not allowed to do all these different things. Like teams can't go into mixed games.
Yeah,
now
really
it's like I
weird.
play with everyone. It's like it's fine, just crack on.
I'm glad CoD still has that freedom at least for now.
Yeah.
But who knows what the future holds?
Who does know?
Activision, baby.
Who does know what the future holds? Because we're coming up onto the end of the year, right? And one of the reasons I did the podcast now, because someone said, "Oh, what are you doing now? You only got champs left to go." I mean, it's not. I don't want to talk just about champs. It's not always about the events. It's not always about that. Call of Duty doesn't stop as soon as champs is over. There are stories to tell. There are players to talk to. We talk about the next game. We talk about what happened during the year. There is an infinite amount of things that make Call of Duty Esports fantastic, and that openness is one of them. Right, the fact that we are going to get stories come out of it, and players are going to tell stuff about what happened during the year and what they thought of their franchises, and we'll probably find out what are the better franchises. No one's really spoke about it because from the out, there are some that look a little bit better than others.
I've heard some things.
Yeah, we don't really know. We don't know whether a team's just been set up and left to run on itself, or whether or not there is massive infrastructure going on behind the scenes. We don't know if people have been laid off. We don't know if people have had salaries moved and adjusted. We don't know what's happening next year. We've heard rumours of a 4v4 fucking expansion. We've heard rumours of 16 teams, no expansion because it's online. We've heard a dozen different things.
Yeah.
So
there's always storylines.
God knows.
They
Honestly,
never stop.
God knows. There was something else I was going to talk about. Something else that I was going to look at. And I'm trying to see if it's in my notes. But I don't know if I actually wrote this one down because there's something else that I saw that come up was pretty big.
Karma's retirement.
Karma's retirement's massive, and I think that's something that could go on for about 6 hours, and I really want to get a dozen pros in to talk about who he is as a person. The current thing. It's the current thing of the start glitch. is what I was going to talk about.
Oh yes.
That's
Wonderful.
the big news this week,
It
because
is.
pros are accusing each other of cheating all over again.
Oh my God. It's
It's
just beautiful to watch at times, but at the same time, it's actually atrocious.
I don't get me. I mean, the drama is always interesting, but I'm curious. I tell you what. I'm going to ask you what you think, and feel free in the chat if you want to put stuff in. This is so. Again, to play devil's advocate on this one, I think it's kind of interesting a player found it and didn't, and somehow that got kept under wraps. Like, I find that really cool that somebody had done that to get the advantage. But the real question is it cheating? Because it's not intended. It's clearly a bug in the game, and just I want to give the full frame of this question. If it's cheating, then there are players who have gone out of their way to legitimately cheat this year. That's what you know. If you take it to the extreme, the logical end of that argument is that teams and players have been abusing something that shouldn't have been in the game, and have been cheating this year. It's not just a line of sight. It's not a strategy. It's not something like that. It's abusing and keeping it quiet to get wins.
I think this is a tough one because. So the first thing I'd say is it's somewhat similar to earlier this year. People discovered that in domination, if you didn't skip your kill cam, you spawned in quicker because the kill cam takes shorter time than what your respawn delay is. Now, and people are calling that cheating, but literally you die, you set your controller down and you do nothing, and therefore you're abusing the glitch or whatever. Where it's different, of course, in this case, and as you say, the very interesting part is that, as I said in the video I made at the time, if you're a pro playing this day in, day out, some people will have discovered this very early on and will have known this has been a thing for a long time. And people are looking at the clips now from the most recent weekend and saying, yeah, that looks a little bit dodgy. I'm sure there were dodgy things that were happening in previous events that we've never even thought about because it wasn't considered at the time. Whereas now everyone's bringing up clips left, right, and center. It's a tough one. It's in the game. It's a bug. It's unintentional, but you do have to, I imagine it's unintentional, but you do have to go out of your way to do it. You have to go in the kill cam, you have to press start, and you have to actually look for that information and go out of your way to do it.
And call them out, and call them out. Which is actually the nail in the coffin here, because
you are deliberately abusing the glitch at that point. There's no other way to put it, really.
Yeah, but also, I'm fairly certain all team comms, as soon as we went online, have been saved.
Yeah, they have.
And I don't know if all the POVs have been saved. I know the comms are, because you could, if the POVs were saved, or you could probably sync up the comms, and you could see when a player died. If that player dies and then makes 3 or 4 call-outs, you'll be like, well, they're doing it, right?
Yeah.
And the key to, obviously now it's been found such at the end of the year that I'm hoping a hot patch comes in. But that's legitimately, it could be called legitimately cheating. It could be.
I think it's such a difficult line to draw, I think, because
it is.
You think of cheating and you think, okay, well, you're plugging something external into your controller, you're like doing something like this. But in this case, because you do like have to go quite significantly out of your way, like usually when I play CoD and I die, I'm just spamming square, like I'm straight back in the game, unless there's a reason for me to watch the kill cam to delay a rotation or something, like I need to wait until the next hill pops so I can get a spawn anchor or whatever. You have to go out of your way. And as you say, you have to call it out. And this is the discussion last night between Crim6 and Classic. Like Classic was saying that, like, wait for the comms to come out and we'll show you that we didn't use that. But then there was another clip that came out of a seam on the rocker, supposedly saying, oh, watch your kill cams, watch your kill cams. And it was a weird one because maybe you thought he was saying that just because they needed to delay to get spawns, because watch your kill cams for that reason. But then looking at the position of the players, it was like, I don't see why that would be beneficial. So, yeah, I don't know. Is this cheating?
It's an interesting question. It really is, right? Like, I'm very curious, right? This is more of a community thing. We figure this one out, and the players and everybody, and I'm sure, you know, some people think, right, this is obviously cheating. And people are talking about the comms right now, you know. People didn't have to hide their comms up until now. People might hide it now. But for me, like it's not. You are right. Pressing the start button is not a natural thing unless I'm changing class or basically that's it, or adjusting a setting. Usually, I'm hitting the scoreboard, checking how bad I'm doing,
Yeah.
or how good my teammates are doing, and carrying me through another GB. This is something different that once you've found it, you've told people, and gone, holy crap, we know their exact team layout. We know if somebody's gone through. We know all this sort of stuff. Are we going to use this? And also, another aspect of this argument, are we going to tell anybody?
That's just what I was thinking.
Are we going to tell him? Because this could have been flagged whenever it got patched a while ago. Could have been, as soon as someone found it, could have been straight away. But now, it hasn't been. There is intent. The problem is there is intent to gain a competitive... That's the intent. Yeah. There is intent to gain a competitive advantage. Because it's in the game, I think that's what the grey area is. You have gone out of your way to not... Especially if you've gone out of your way and you've not told anybody, right? You've gone, right, we'll keep this for us. This might help us win a hardpoint or a dom, right? This might help us, because we'll find somebody who's got through, or we can find out how they're stacking. And that, is different. It's different to going, oh, I accidentally, saw it through the map at, this point because the graphic textures blicked out or something, This is willfully going and saying, we know there is now something in the game that will give us an advantage. And we're not going to tell anybody. We're not going to tell the devs. We're not going to get hot fixed. We're keeping this locked in.
That's the thing. I think that is the crux of it, because when you, as I say, this season, some teams definitely knew about this longer than we found out about it. I don't play the game that much. I didn't know about this until it dropped. But I made the video and people were saying, yo, you didn't know about this? So I'm like, okay, well, some pro teams definitely knew about this. And we're talking about how earlier in the season we had someone like Atlanta FaZe, for example, and we had the slide cancel thing. And people were saying that they knew how to slide cancel before other teams and how to use this movement and whatever. And they kind of kept the movement mechanic a secret until other people figured it out. So if that's the case, then absolutely it could be the case that some of these teams have known about this glitch for a number of months and have been using it to their advantage. And as you say, it's intent to gain a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And not revealing it is definitely putting me on the other side of the fence. Whereas before I was rather unsure.
It's a difficult one. Because I don't want to. You don't want to go and make that sense. Go, yep, you're a cheater, because that has implications, right?
Yeah,
that's not something small to actually go out and call someone a cheater. It's not on the level of a strike pack, but it's doing the same thing. Here's another one though, because we're talking about the slide cancelling thing. What do you think's worse? Because the slide cancelling is a mechanic in game, and obviously you use it to cancel an animation and go through, and that's. That is something that's actually happening in a lot of esports. People cancel animations. Ying is a cancel of a reload animation.
Sure.
Reload cancel, all that sort of stuff happens very normally. Slide cancelling is now ubiquitous. It's it's not as good as it was, but everybody does it. Although you can't hit it every time without if you're not good at it, which I'm not. So what do you think the difference is between the we're talking about this thing, which is using the game to find out enemy positions. And the other one, which is a mechanical use of in-game animations. They sound very similar, but I feel like they're very, very different.
Yeah, I agree, because an in-game animation, that could be intentional in a way.
Yeah.
It might not necessarily be coded. Obviously, it's coded, and you can do it, but it's not necessarily coded as intentional. I'm thinking back to Black Ops 3, and I'm thinking all the movements you could do on that game, wall bouncing, ledge sliding, all of this kind of stuff. Is that an intentional movement? Someone must have discovered that you can, ledge cancel onto a wall and jump, and then, wall bounce along the whole of, Fringe without, someone must have discovered that first. Is that an unintentional movement mechanic, or what it is? Whereas and that's just something you do as a mechanic.
Yeah.
But this one where you have to go out of your way to gain a competitive advantage is, I think it is a different thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I had to ask the question though. I had to see what you thought about it, because what they say are the same, right? Because you're both using in-game things, right? It's not something you're doing externally. It's not like you're plugging in or you've hidden a webcam in another player's home or anything ridiculous like that. Okay, you're doing something in-game that anybody can do. to get a competitive advantage. It's not something you've added. It's not something that you've put in. So what is the people may ask, idiots, but people may ask what what is the difference? And obviously this one is a difference between a movement mechanic and a literal eye in the sky can see them. I mean, it's basically like if you go, well, if I lean back in my chair, I can see the other player's screen, right? If you think of it like that, clearly illegal, right? Clearly, disqualification should happen if you see a player doing that. That's what they're doing. It's just in-game. And when you think about it like that, you start to realize how serious this is.
I guess like the point is, I guess the conclusion is, where do we go from here? What is the solution? If there's no hot fix, then I think you can disable kill cams. That is a thing.
Yeah, got to.
Which, I mean, surely they just have to, right? Like the amount of discussion this has had on Twitter over the last few days, and certainly for good reason. People are talking about it all over the place. Like when the competitive integrity of the league is at stake, they really have to consider this because I guarantee if this doesn't happen, we go to champs. Very first series, clips were on Twitter about how did he know he was in the back there? And it's just, again, another thing we've talked about today, which we just don't want to have this discussion. So if they can't do a hotfix, I imagine you just have to disable kill cams in competitive in CDL rule sets, because you can do it if you're not using CDL, but I imagine as soon as you click CDL enable, then kill cams are allowed. And well, that's not ideal, right? Because it reduces the skill gap in the sense that watching your kill cams is a skill gap in certain situations. People who forget to do it spawn out, but I guess it's a necessary sacrifice.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that has to happen. If there isn't a hotfix, because I can't figure out what's wrong with it. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, right? Hotfixes towards champs, I don't like the idea of anyway, because if it wouldn't be the first time that something's been fixed and something else is broken, or just turning off the kill cams. I think that could just happen, right? Just turn off the kill cams, just make sure it's good, and hope.
They've got 3 weeks. They've got 3 weeks, pretty much. Let's call it 2, because you don't want to do hot fixes right before the event. But
I mean, wouldn't be the weirdest thing that's happened before a champs. I'm not gonna lie to you. Wouldn't be.
True.
All right, let's get some questions from the chat now on where to go, because like I said, we're trying to cover several months of it here, and I know I'll come back now. I'm back now. Right, cool.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to start a Patreon just to get a new mic set up. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't even know what's wrong with it, but I'm going to get some questions from the chats and the thoughts from people in there, and kind of bring us some of the topics you think we should be covering. I do want to talk though very quickly. Hot topic: Toronto Ultras win, which did come out of left field. Full credit to them. There was a big discussion. I know I had a big discussion. I think you were on that show, Rab, when I did it, about Toronto Ultras taking a very unique view on rosters for the year. They took 10 players. They've now settled into this roster. It's all fallen on Marky B, and now they've got a win, and a big win, right? Because before, right,
enormous.
Before that event, nobody would have picked them to get anywhere near winning champs. Nobody. But they took down some giant fishes, some big scalps to win that event, and now you're going, well, if they've done it before, there's no reason they can't do it again.
The question, right?
Yeah.
It's a good topic as well, given that you were talking about European talent and the difficulty in getting to the States right now.
Yeah.
And you've got the Kleenex pickup. I mean, it took them long enough to finally settle on a team, right? But it happened eventually. And then we had the whole classic thing, and he was out because he decided to leave and go home to his family or whatever, and they wouldn't let him scrim from outside Toronto. All of this just crap that they should never have had to deal with, and then bring him back one day before an event they do bad, and then they sub him out or whatever, and then he subs back in. What is life? But I mean, it's just fantastic to see that team doing well, to be honest. I mean, Cammy has been unbelievable for them. Bance has been not even typically sometimes kind of inconsistent, but he's been phenomenal for them when they've needed him. Cammy with the sniper, Cammy's honestly been their star player as of late, and Classic's been serviceable. much improved year for him. Like I've been really impressed by him, to be honest, this entire year, especially after a difficult LG season in the Black Ops 4 days. Of course, another Infinity Ward game, so it's Classics Playground, I guess. And then this Kleenex change, right? And Kleenex, it's not like he's been putting up crazy numbers, but that that aggressive SMG that he brings to the table is just it's just been really, really good for them. And they've looked so much better for a few events. Like I think they actually have the second best record since Kleenex joined the team. If you look at all the teams in the league and like tally up their records, Toronto has the second best record since Kleenex joined. Like, so markedly better, and they certainly deserve to be top 8 in the CDL. And the fact that they were like they had to make the final and have OGLA make the semis to make that happen, and they just won it anyway. And of course, people are going to talk about, well, the cheating thing, yes, against Chicago, the Pristini lag-out situation, but the wins against FaZe and Empire were nothing to scoff at all.
That's some massive names to take down. I was so surprised, like, holy shit, Toronto. And, I said before, full credit to Marky. I can't imagine if Marky B's life has been easy. Towards the bottom of the league, you've got 10 players. You've got the 2
teams, like Toronto Black, whatever. Like, you've got all those players on that team probably wanting to go in the starting lineup. Like,
he got a lot of flack for the classic thing. Like, a lot of flack for the classic thing. He was probably... I wouldn't even surprise it if at some point he was a little bit worried about what would happen to him next year. Because I don't know the internals of Toronto Ultra at all. Sure. But any coach in this league who are in that bottom half, or even if you're not, maybe some of the coaches, if you're outside the top 4 at the moment and you have a bad chance, you're probably sitting there going, holy shit, I could be in trouble here for next year, because there are a lot of people lining up to take your spot, from retired players to people who have coaching experience in some regard, right? Because you don't need to be an expert if you can manage personnel and get an expert. And you can. There are a lot of people who know that. And you get a new game. So everybody who knew how to play the old CoD is going to learn again anyway. So it's not an easy life for coaches at the moment. But I thought Toronto Ultra winning was fantastic. And to pick up on a point you said about Bance, cast your mind back to the start of the year and how low his stock had fallen.
Yeah.
We didn't
really
even know,
great to see.
We didn't even know if he would get into a squad.
Yeah. That's crazy how things change, right? Like you look from I mean, it just takes me back, to be honest, to Vegas last year, or the whatever it was with Lightning Panda's team, and they came top 6 or whatever, and like how much difference that could have made, right? The Black Ops 4 season, if they'd have qualified for the Pro League.
Yeah.
And then things went tits up with the PLQ. But that things could have been so different, and seeing from where Bance was after I was just thinking about that in relation to the Infinite Warfare Stage 1 playoffs win, and then looking back to how his career's developed, and like being screwed over so many times on Red Reserve, then Denial, then onto units or whatever, and then the stock falls through the floor, and then coming back to the point where it's kind of back and forth, like he gets in the starting roster ahead of the London event, and then they keep him on from there, and he's just continued to improve as a player and be an absolute catalyst for them. So that's really great to see. I'm really happy for that, because London obviously have been a bit up and down. Their clutch factor as a team has been non-existent at times.
Toronto won before London did.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Nobody would have predicted that.
Especially given, this is what I find increasingly crazy, is that Toronto's round 11 record the entire year has been like awful. They're like 1-5, 1-6, something like that. And they lose another round 11 in the game 2 to Chicago. And then from that, well, after the game 2, for the rest of the tournament, they were the clutchest team like of all time. 250, 244 in hard points, 250, 247, 6-5 S&Ds, game 5 round 11 methods, 1v2 clutch, like the clutchest team of all time, right? And like, fact of the matter is, London aren't doing that, right? Like when it comes down to a game 5 round 11, I'm picking against London. It's just something about the nature of that team. They just haven't got it figured out. So it was great to see some European guys get a dub, even if it was on online, right?
Yeah, now you mention it, London. I can't believe London haven't won.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not like they deserve a win, because
I mean they've got a final, but so a few others. Like I mean, imagine if Paris won.
Close.
Imagine if Paris won when they got to the final, and and then you'd be like, oh, Toronto and Paris have won this year, but London didn't.
Yeah.
Because London have mixed, they mix it up with good teams. Like you put London against like Atlanta, Dallas, the Huntsmen, Munich, anybody, right? And you'd be like, they could beat them here. They could beat them here, right? No bones about it. There is a very good chance London could take any one of those teams. but they just haven't done it consistently.
I
Like
mean,
they,
the
and
thing is,
then they
like,
lose randomly. And you're like, oh god.
yeah, a lot of like their respawn is pretty solid, and their search and destroy has been. I don't know when the last time they lost an Arcloth Peakers. I think they actually did maybe to lose it to Paris or something, but they were just like Waskin is just the fact that you can have a guy that just consistently drops like 10 kills with a sniper on that map and just opens up round after round after round is crazy. And the fact that they haven't, I guess, capitalized on the talent they have as a squad and won an event is unfortunate. The problem is that they're so good at winning one of the respawns and winning the first search, but when it comes down to a game 5, it's just they've just had trouble closing things out against the best teams. They have also had tough runs, like a couple of tourneys they've played Chicago, Atlanta, and then like that it's the way the format worked for the entire season, the fact that the decisions on how basically the entire season was going to be defined in terms of group play has been defined at the beginning of the season. So some teams get unlucky, and London's certainly one of those in the group draw.
Yeah.
But they've had the chance where they got to the grand finals when they first made the zero change. Chicago got the better of them then with the Pristini move, and since then they've showed a lot of promise, but just haven't got over the line. Maybe Champs is the one.
Maybe that's what it is. All year, all the way up to Champs, which they could win. They could 100%. I'm still picking Seattle Surge.
They played Paris round 1.
Yeah, I'm still picking Seattle Surge because it'd be great.
It's a baller pick.
Imagine Octane just rocks up and wins Champs. That'd be fantastic. I love that. Love to see it. Okay, speaking of Champs, questions from the chat, right? This is a great one. Do you guys think postponing Champs was an option?
I think I know Slasher talked about this, or at least it was a conversation when Slasher talked about Champs being online.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that, okay, so you're postponing Champs with the intention of having it on LAN, right? But the problem is that we have no way of knowing at all when that would ever be the case. I'm sure it was something that was considered, but the problem is, when do we postpone to, right? Let's say the next CoD is perfectly on track and it's going to come at the start of November. That gives us probably until, in September. Like, let's say, in theory, we think, okay, can we realistically do it on LAN by end of September? And if we can't, which we can't because we just don't know, we might not be able to do it on LAN by next February, or, who knows, right? And given that's the case, we then land at the point of, well, what's the point of postponing it if we're going to have to do it online? So I'm sure it was a discussion. I believe actually the team owners did discuss this. They had conversations and they voted on it and stuff. And I think maybe there was 2 that voted for it being postponed and being on LAN or something. I forget exactly what the rumor is or what the story was. But it was a conversation, certainly a conversation worth having, but not something that was ever going to be feasible.
No, I saw that argument and I just laughed. Now, I'm not going to get political with this, right? Because I don't know what Americans know about the way that coronavirus has been seen across the world. Because obviously, in England, we see different to American. It's a little bit more broad now because of the internet and Twitter and all sorts of stuff. But that I tweeted about it, right? I said, this is why we can't have Champs on LAN. And just put the graph of everybody else going, I was going, boom, America's just gone berserk. And it's not going to be fixed next month. This is going to keep coming till maybe the end of the year, at the very least, and possibly with a vaccine. It's not feasible. Now, here's something that people haven't told you, and this isn't confidential information. This is just kind of how I was told it works from an unofficial channel. I should point out, so no one gets in trouble. The reason Champs got moved to August, obviously, because it's because it used to have it in the middle of the year, and that was really stupid, towards the start, right? But the reason it's now and not just before the other COD comes out, because people have asked that before, right? People have asked why doesn't it happen just 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month before the other COD comes out? Why have we got such a big break? That happens because apparently that is a peak time of engagement for it, right? The marketing and whatever statistics they use and the analytics, that's roughly when it peaks in interest. That's when their numbers are the best. That's when they'll get the best viewership and the best eyeballs on the product. So that's roughly when it should happen. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is this whole thing is set up way in advance, and you can change it, but it's set up to be this big crescendo. They're big, 4.5 million. It's going to be huge. It's going to be the World Championship. Let's get it done, right? And to split it over several smaller events takes away from that. It takes away from no marketing person would ever really go for it because it doesn't make sense for them to put out. It becomes nothing then, right? We haven't spoken about prize pools for any of the events so far, and we don't really speak about prize pools anymore, apart from champs, because the number is so egregious. So you've got to remember that is a headline in itself. Another aspect, right, is that everybody internally has been working to a schedule. It's not a small thing to run a world championship, and it probably, even though they've now cancelled the venue and stuff, there's still a lot of people who will be working on it from social, from marketing, from internal, from the devs, from the servers. All these people are working to a schedule of this. And the next game is coming. You don't want to be talking about the last game when you're trying to hype up the new game. It's just marketing 101. You don't split your focus. You build the hype, you build the momentum, and you get the marketing out there and you punch it down people's throats because you want to sell 1.2 billion worth of games come October or November or whenever it's coming out, right? And esports, as we well know, while we love it, and I can't get enough of Call of Duty esports, I genuinely can't, it pales in comparison to when you put your fucking billions on the table. Nobody is going to look at the esports side when there are billions, and that's what you're working for. That's what people are doing their jobs for. Development, studios, stockholders, the board members, directors, everybody is looking at the launch of the new game. I mean, I'm sorry, but they couldn't give a shit if you want to move champs a little bit so it's better for you. Fuck you, get that over with, get that money on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's cutting their losses time for this season, and it's like, okay, how the hell do we possibly rebound from this and balance the bottom line with the most possible sales of this new CoD that we could ever possibly imagine? And if the way to do that is to keep champs where it is and keep the Activision marketing engine churning over, then that's exactly how we're going to do it, right? And if there is some sort of announcement come champs, that would be great. That would be perfect timing. Maybe, I mean, there was talks from Morks a while ago. He said on Reddit somewhere that they've already had a discussion with Treyarch about, I forget exactly the phrasing he used, but basically competitive, I forget exactly what term, like the notion of competitive and like the direction they want to take with that, and actually talking about competitive with the developers, which is a rare sight nowadays. Yeah. So definitely some promising stuff potentially, and but I agree, yeah, never realistically going to be postponed.
No, it really wasn't. Okay, I think we're coming towards the end now. Anyway, so...
wow.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. I don't know what that is. I'm sure somebody can. It pulls out, right? It destroys every single one of my audios, and I don't know why.
Oh, I see. I disappear as well. Okay,
yeah, everybody disappears. I can still, so here's the thing. I can still hear you, but it doesn't go out to the desktop. So I don't know why. I don't know what it does. And I'm sure I'll have to get that fixed. Like I said, this one was going to be loose and fast, and I'll figure that out for next time.
Sure.
Is there anything you wanted to talk about? Because I know there's been a lot going on. And I thought, is there any topic at the top of your mind you're like, I would love to quickly discuss this in more context?
I'm just looking through the videos, man, just to see what craziness has happened over the last however long.
Yeah, I can say to anybody watching, if you aren't subscribed to Tactical Rab, you're an idiot.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah, you've been smashing it this year. Absolutely killing it. Much better at thumbnails than me, by the way. Jesus.
I mean, it's got better. It's quite fun. I do enjoy making them. People used to like say, "Oh, the thumbnails are crap" and everything, and they are kind of crap. Like I literally make them on Microsoft Word, and then I screenshot them using like ShareX.
That's brilliant.
And like, but I don't know. I find that the best way to do it. And like, Word has some nice tools that you can put glows on the outside, and I don't know. They've definitely got better in. It's just one of those things, right? Like for any creative endeavor, the first time you do it is not going to be good, but you have to start at 1 to get to 500, and we're now at 600 and I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's been an interesting time, and I don't know really what the future holds. And I guess one of the things I always think about and people talk about a lot is like, what does CoD look like, at least the Call of Duty League, in X amount of years? Because right now the Overwatch League is in a bit of a tough spot. You got the CDL, of course, everything's going online. Is the investment still going to be there? And then you've got the other side of it that says, well, like, how long is competitive going to be legit? Is there going to be a competitive focused game in the future? Is CoD going to be around in 20 years? Because that's the discussion, right? When I listen to like Gary V and Joanna Fairies and that, when they talk about the CDL, they talk about how if you're a kid coming out of school in 20 years, they want you to see NFL, NBA, CDL as like an option, as like a career path.
Yeah.
Which is, I love the vision, right? But
it's a bit ambitious.
whether that's feasible is another question.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question about the future of CoD, because I think so. Some people think it's not going to be around, and some people think it'll be around for a long time. There are two main schools of thoughts. One is that esports is a very fluid place, and anything can happen, right? And games don't typically have the longest shelf life. Like CS:GO's been around for a while, Dota, League, these sort of things. COD's never been at those tier 1 levels, but we also have a very unique point where the game does sell over $1 billion in revenue every year. And as long as that keeps coming, as long as we still get those, we don't have to convert that many people if that's the numbers that are going out. Like many people don't have to care about competitive, because the wider casual market is so big, which is the tiniest sliver, and we still kind of rock in an esports term. And I think that will continue for a while unless something really messes it up. So for at least 5 years. I wouldn't worry about it for 5 years. Maybe there's some rejigging. Maybe they fix some of the mistakes they've made. Make it a more sustainable way to go forward. Maybe we get we only need 1 year of a berserkly good game. Everybody piling on. The mechanics are great. Everybody wants to play it. They love playing comp. We get all the support we need. And all of a sudden we're rocketing. We're going, this is great. Everybody wants to play comp. We've got 400,000 watching the stream. And I do think that could happen. I think if we get the right groove, we get it into it. I know this because I love playing competitive Call of Duty. I love watching competitive Call of Duty. There is an intensity to this Twitch shooter that cannot be matched. It is speed, it is tactics, it is minute decision making, and it is unique in the fact that we change it every single year.
Yeah, I love it, man. And obviously we're probably kind of biased, but I'm optimistic in that sense. And one of the reasons I'm optimistic is that I don't want to call them like haters, but a lot of people will be on the Reddit talking about how COD's dying, that there's no new fans coming in. I'm pretty sure the growth on the competitive COD subreddit has been bigger this year than it has ever been in any year before.
Yeah.
The growth of my channel, obviously, just as an example, the growth in Call of Duty content being watched on a competitive side, the amount of people that comment on the videos or DM me and stuff saying that they've just discovered the channel. I even had a mate that I knew from my swimming club that I imagine I knew that he played COD or something, but he stumbled across my videos and was kind of getting into competitive. So many people, the majority of people that I hear talking about it are like, yeah, I'm just getting into COD. What does P1, P2, what do those rotations mean? And maybe we don't see it, maybe we don't talk about it as much, but there's definitely a hell of a lot of people that are getting into comp every single day that flies under the radar. And that's something that if we have a great game and a great title, it will be even better. So yeah, I always have an optimistic outlook on stuff like this.
So there's something called tribalism, right? Or at least the way it was explained to me when I first started at my job as a 16-year-old apprentice way back in the day. About after you've been in a situation long enough, you start seeing it from the perspective of being in that situation. And it was to do with the management were telling us about the workers and stuff. And as soon as I was a worker, I was like, yeah, the management are morons. But I think people forget that it's very easy to moan about Call of Duty. It's very easy to say X, Y, and Z. Oh, this is bad and this is bad, and because you can tell. I can tell if something is off because I've been watching it for years and I play it and I enjoy it. But we see it at a higher level than casuals do. Right, we understand the game at a completely different level. So we know what's good, and we ignore that for what's bad. Right, but the truth of the matter is, it's still fucking good. Right,
it is still good.
It's still good. We still like playing it. We still enjoy it. It's going to be one of the ones where we still get a thrill from competing and trying our best and getting into it. And if pros are honest, yeah, it's frustrating and yeah, it's stressful. But you still get to do this, yeah. You still get to do it, right? You still kind of like it. You do kind of like it. You're not sitting there going oh, this is shit. I hate it constantly. I don't know why I'm doing this with my life. You're not. I don't think many pros are in it just for the money. They're in it for the thrill of competition.
Absolutely.
And some of them could probably go try and compete in other esports. Some of them are just natural born multi-gamers.
Yeah.
So I like that positive side. I like to remind myself occasionally that yes, this is still great, and I still enjoy the storylines and the players and the aspects of it, and watching a close game and watching Toronto Ultras come and smash their own home series. That's fantastic. And I think that's where I kind of like want to end this podcast on a positive note, to say that yeah, I've come back to have a bit of a moan, and Rab's come and joined me. Thank you so much, Rab. But
all good.
It is something that's, and I know this because I've still been ranting in Discord calls about CoD and enjoying the discourse and enjoying the conversation. So yeah, anything else you want to say, Rab? I don't want to, you've come on graciously. So anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. I think that was a great summary. It's nice to have that optimistic and, in a sense, grateful note, which I think we especially will, when we are finally back on LAN and we finally get events and we're finally back in the copper box or whatever. It's gonna be great to see how like everything's been online and it's been all of a challenge. But at the end of the day, we should still be grateful for the fact that we do have high level competitive play. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of entertainment to be watched, and when we finally do have the opportunity to be back, it's going to be even better. So it's nice sometimes not to always have to take things for granted.
Yeah. All
so
right.
that's how I'd leave it.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on, Rab. I genuinely. Okay, we should be back. As an ending,
Yep,
and
good.
ignoring the microphone, what I'm going to say is this. First of all, thank you so much for coming on, Rab. I know I called you last minute, but I appreciate you coming on and adding another aspect to my ranty bullshit that I like to do. I do appreciate it. And make sure if you are this, go follow him on Twitter. Go follow him on his YouTube. It's great content and you're going to enjoy it, right? You do very frequent videos, which I think is fantastic. Putting that content constantly out there about the Call of Duty scene. So, from me, I know this has been a bit of a rough episode, but I wanted to get back into it, and my graphics were a little bit late. There are graphics. I know that what you're seeing right now is a bit rough, but it will get better. I will endeavour to make this a regular thing. It will go on the YouTube to begin with, because you have to have 5 episodes before you can publish on Spotify, and then it will go on to all the usual channels. Thank you for everybody who has subbed here. I've seen a few people. I think Gare has subbed. Thank you so much. Jenna, unbelievable. Thanks so much for the 50 drop subs, by the way.
Donos, yeah.
Holy I'll always address these at the end. Thank you so much for it. I'm going to continue. I'm going to try and make this better. I'm going to try and make it consistent. I love Call of Duty, and I won't give up on talking about it from a rational point of view. It's just not something I can do. As much as it may be painful sometimes, I love this too much. So thank you so much. Subscribe to the YouTube. Follow the channel. This has been Brice. It's been the Bricecast. See you next time.